do you have any prejudices yourself?
I am from France, and I am prejudiced against Germans because they invaded twice my country. They killed my people. They put them in concentration camps, and I can't forget it quite now. I think it will take some years to get rid of these prejudices, but I hope I shall be able to get rid of them.
I'm from Israel, and I think that my greatest prejudice is not against Arab people, but against Arab leaders.
I am from Turkey. My own prejudices are friendly with other countries. I think that English people are deceitful and skillful in political dealings. French people are so fashionable and romantic. I am prejudiced against Russia because my own government had to have a big army every time.
I am from Lebanon. If prejudice is hatred without a reason, I have no prejudices at all. I have reasonable prejudices against the Turks, the French, and the Israeli.
The subject for this discussion is the roots of prejudice. But before we begin the discussion, let me introduce you to the four participants. First of all, from the Lebanon is Ziad Husami. From France, Catherine Orcel. From Israel, Daphne Robinovitz. And from Turkey, Selma Sasiya. Now, you've all stated some of your major prejudices. Suppose we ask you first, is it a constant in human affairs, or do prejudice between nations sometimes accelerate or decelerate?
Well, I personally think that whenever it's created in any human soul, it remains there. But at certain instances, it is accelerated, and at certain instances, it is decelerated. Anyway, in everyone, there is a certain amount of prejudice.
But, for example, if it changes with time, why do you still have prejudice against the Turks? That was such a long time ago.
Well, it's because now, for example, I can find the result of the Turkish colonization in Lebanon. For 500 years, they colonized the country, deprived the people from self-government. They didn't teach them how to govern themselves, for example. They imprisoned their national leaders. They made them starve in the First World War, that 2 million Lebanese had to immigrate from Lebanon to other parts of the world so that they can feed themselves. Now I can find the results of the Turkish colonization. When they left illiteracy that we had to fight so strongly since 1944 when we had our independence, that now we are lucky enough that we have 1% illiteracy in Lebanon. So that's why I still have this prejudice against the Turks.
I wonder if Selma has, excuse me, Daphne, I wonder if the Turks have prejudices against the Arabs, do you?
Yes, I think so.
You didn't mention those at the beginning.
I think that our religion, as Ziad mentioned, he said that the Turks just made colonization in Lebanon, and they just didn't give an opportunity to develop our continent, our country, and our people. But I am just prejudiced against Arabs because we had to give their civilization, and against to develop our country, we had to protect all Arab nations for long years. And why? We received their religion, we received their rights, their rules in our country, and our country had to wait for civilization by hearing for women's rights. Turkish women had rights before receiving Muslim religion, but when they received Muslim religion, polygamy was occurred, and Turkish women lost their rights, and everything was happened unfortunate. And Turks are just trying to help Arab nations and just try to preserve Muslim religion against the crusaders. And he mentioned that Turks just made colonization. What did they do in Turkey? Turkey delayed 300 years between European countries. Right, they are discovering new continents. They had to wait for a long time.
I think everyone knows that the Turks were tribes wandering in Asia Minor, and they had no civilization at all. That's why they had to use the Arabic letters before. They had to take most of the Arab civilization because they had none at the time. When Mustafa Ataturk came, he found that influence in their country, so he stopped it by force even.
Of course.
Yes. And you cannot say, and this doesn't mean in any way, because you took some of our civilization or our contributions to civilization, that you have to colonize the people later on. You came to power. First, you were only soldiers.
Let me
You were
interrupt you
only
just a minute,
soldiers.
Ziad, because I wonder if there's an analogy here. Here we have the Turks conquering the Arab countries, but
Yes.
absorbing their religion. I wonder if today there are any analogies with that. A country conquers another country, but...
And be affected by it,
Yes.
because in civilization, we were higher than them. So they were affected by us. You see the point?
How
Anyway,
can
they
you?
took the religion. They were soldiers in the Muslim army, and you had a caliphate at that time. Then they came to power there, their soldiers, and they had the Ottoman Empire. And they came and conquered the country, took it from the Arabs, and ruled it for 500 years.
Well, but let me ask you this. Do you feel nearer to the Turks than you do to other neighboring non-Arab countries because they have your religion?
You mean, for what?
You say
No,
you had prejudice.
I don't think, no. I don't think that religion has any effect on me personally.
But isn't the Muslim religion a thing that has united all the other Arab states very much?
No, I don't think the religion alone.
I just wondered why there was
No,
that difference.
because in the
with
Arab
Turkey.
world also.
Well, let me go on to another point.
Okay.
You say that the more you know, or people often say, the more you know about something or someone, the better you understand it. How are the four of you reacting to this? Is this true in your experience or not?
Well, I think that this is true. The more you know people, you can understand their background. You can understand what brought them to think or to do what they do. For instance, I visited the Gaza Strip before I came here to America, and of course, before I heard the conditions, I heard everything, but I could only talk from what I heard and what I'd read. But after visiting and seeing those people, I can just talk from my own experience, and I don't think it would be nor second-hand nor third-hand from what I can speak now. Now I can understand why they hate us. I can see what brought them to do so. But of course, that does bring me to know why they did all of that, and that I think is not them, but is their leaders. And there I come to.
Sorry.
And there I come to the first point that I said at the beginning.
What do
How
you
about
mean?
you, Katrin? Do you find that learning more about others in the group helps you understand any things you didn't understand before?
Well, I thought so, that it would help me a lot to discuss with them the current events. But they get so mad when they start talking policy.
Who do you
For
mean by
instance-
countries in this
I mean,
group?
for instance, the boy from Jordan, and the boy from Lebanon, and the boy from Morocco. When they start talking of independence and freedom, they get so mad that I cannot even understand what they want to explain me. And if they were more tolerant and more patient when they are trying to convince me, I should probably understand them much better.
One wonders what tolerance in the French dictionary is. Is tolerance that we have to accept your colonization? Is tolerance that you have the right to consider Algeria as an integral part of the metropolitan France, while you have no right in it? What is tolerance? Is it that you have to change the mosques in Algeria into stables for your horses? Now, when one sees what is happening in Algeria, one has to say that the French who destroyed the Bastille in France are erecting a Bastille for the Algerians, and I think they will destroy it because they are armed with the great cause of liberty. Now, had you been wiser, you would have given them their self-government and have them as friends instead of enemies.
Yeah, while I was listening to you, I felt very ashamed of French people, and I'm very sorry you're prejudiced against them, because I like you.
Thank you.
But I want to tell you that you seem to me pretty well undertrained about French ideas, and I think our own purpose was to spread our ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Probably there was much evil in our colonialism, but the very important thing is that we could spread these ideas and see that it was very widely spread in all the world, whether it is in Algeria or in Middle East. And I'm very proud of it.
That's true, but you haven't lived it very much in your colonial policy. I mean, you spoke of fraternity and equality and liberty, but you did not give it to those persons. You told them about it, and then you deprived them from it by force.
Well, we probably did that, but I think that the important thing was to give the idea to those people, because we thought that we could bring them something in spreading this idea.
That's true, but an idea is of no value unless you live it.
Well, the important thing is now that you have come to the point that you realize that you have a chance to be free. And whether you receive this freedom for France or from any other country, we give that hope to you, and it is not so bad after all. And we have never been so close toward understanding as we are now, and I think it's much because of the colonialism, and you can be against that.
And I believe that the suggestions that were given in the UN after discussing the Algerian problem can settle the case.
To come back a bit to our point on prejudice, let's see if there's a logical sequence here. You've just said that the more you know or understand about, the more you know about something, the better you understand it. You kids are living in an age where communication is instant, with radio, television, press. Does what you say about you as individuals follow for countries? When you can find out immediately what goes on all over the world, does that make you love your neighbors more?
Well, I would say it sometimes depends. Sometimes you get out of the radio or television or newspaper something which brings you to understand them more, and then you can like them. Sometimes it brings you news that you can see, oh, well, that does so in myself the idea that they aren't, or is they are as bad as I thought them. But of course, communication in a way is very good, because for instance, we learn Arabic in Israel, and we want to have closer connection with the Arabs. Now, what's the use of having a peace or any connection without having a common language? Communication sometimes is the most important thing. You can't do anything without it.
Do you mean to say that Israel would give up the Hebrew language and adopt the Arabic language?
No, I wouldn't say that.
What do you mean by the common language?
All right, well, I wouldn't say that, but you could. But don't tell me that if I speak Hebrew, I can't speak English. If I can speak Hebrew, now I come to America or come to England, and I can understand the people. I live in Israel, I go to the Arab countries, I have to speak common language with them. If they don't learn Hebrew, and I'm sorry about that, at least I can learn Arabic, and then I have something with them. But it doesn't have to I mean, I would like to know many languages and not only one. I think I can understand
knowing languages is something, and exaggerating the fact that you know some Arabic is something else. To learn our language does not mean that you have settled the Arab-Israeli question at all. Nor can you reach a peaceful resolution or a permanent resolution by learning the language. This, I think, is exaggerated. Nor did Israel prove in any of its aggressive actions against the Arab countries that it can, through learning the language, settle the problem.
Wait a minute, give France a chance.
We started on communication means, and we are now in the Arab discussion. Would you let me give my own point about communication means in my country?
Okay, sure.
I just want to say that newspapers, radio, and TV don't give us really the other sides as they are, because I didn't know anything about how we behave in our colonialism abroad. I just only knew the good sides, and I just saw in the newspapers that rebels killed so many French people, but I never knew the other side, and I have to admit it.
Yes, I think too that communications can help to understand if they present always the two sides of every issue.
I think it would be useful to go back in your own recent experience and tell us what things that you have read or heard or been taught have made you feel more friendly to your neighbor, and what things have made you feel less friendly. It's important for us adults to know the kind of training and education you're getting in this area.
Well, I would say that because I read or because I see myself, for instance, I can take my own experience, the Arab nations and Israel. Because I know that their standard of life is low, and because I know that they ran out of the country and they're now settled in bad positions, and I know that their leaders want to draw the hatred as inside as possible in them. Of course, it brings me to the position that I can say that the Arab leaders, those are the ones who bring the Arab people to hate us, because I'm sure that a peasant or a poor peasant who is living in the Nile or any other place, he doesn't want war with Israel. He knows that now because Nasser wants to make a whole empire of himself, and because and he's got to put up an army, he's got to pay more tax.
Who told you that? Now we are speaking about propaganda. I want to say this. The Arabs feel this. It is very simple. We accepted to give the Jews refuge in our land. They wanted a state and they took it by force. So this caused the whole problem. The Arabs throughout that area feel that they are the same, one hand and one heart. When you deprive the Palestinians, 1.25 million from their land, every Arab feels that he is injured, you see? And that's why they see this enmity against Israel. The leaders in the Arab world are nothing but the representation of the common will of the Arabs. The hatred you are speaking about is not because one of our leaders had some prejudice against your prime minister. It is something that the whole bulk of the people feel.
But why do they feel that?
Why? Because you have no right in taking Palestine. You have no right in depriving the people from their land.
Excuse me, we didn't deprive them.
Sure you did.
The United Nations came to a resolution that Israel is going to be a
Did you follow
nation.
the resolution?
Who didn't follow
You
the
did not.
Excuse me, 1 second. Who didn't follow the resolution? You said you are not...
Both did not.
Wait a minute.
Both
Let me
did
also
not.
speak. Give me a chance.
Okay, sure.
All right. Well, the United Nations came to a resolution. The Arabs said we aren't going to put up with anything. And the same day that the last English men went out of the country, the 7 Arab countries went into Israel to destroy it.
Because at
You
the
wouldn't
same time, the 3 Israeli gangs, the Haganah, the Stern, and the Irgun, were terrorizing the Arab inhabitants, and they caused by their terrorism a flight. For example, in Deir Yassin, they killed 200 persons, men, women, and children. They blew in Jerusalem King David Hotel. Nobody can deny this. So the Arab countries had to interfere and protect the remaining Arabs there.
Are you talking for you or for the English? Because the King David Hotel was only blown because of the English. We wanted
Yes,
our freedom.
but
and
the
we sent
officers who
English
were
away.
killed in Jerusalem,
Well, what about all the other people who were killed because of the Arabs? Who
why?
started the whole terror with the Arabs?
You did.
We did.
Sure.
Well, I'm not sure
Well, this
about
is how,
that.
anyway, the problem is controversial. Now, we cannot settle such a problem. All that I can say from personal opinion that our delegates in the UN can do it, and it's their job. But everyone hopes in this world that we will live in peace and that we will come through the UN to understanding and having a peaceful and just resolution for us.
Are there any areas that you, Ziad, and you, Daphne, as teenagers who've got a whole life ahead of you, do you ever just think, well, now, maybe if this just didn't exist, what are the areas in which our countries could be working together? Do you ever think about that?
Well, I think that the
Well, I
most...
don't know. It's more connected with the government than with the individuals. I mean, I can't decide where can the 2 countries work together or not.
Would you ever think about it, Daphne?
Of course, I think that the Arab countries and Israel have got so much together. First of all, I think we are from the same tribe. I mean, the Arabic language, the Hebrew language are, I would say, 2 sisters from one mother
That's
tongue.
true.
And I would say that the most natural thing is that a country would trade and would have connections with their neighbors. And not that if you have to trade, you've got to go all the way from Israel to America or to England or to anyone else. I think that the Israeli are, I think that's known, that we're a modern country and a European country. And I would say that the Arabs are more back. You've got very many, you've got a low...
This is not true. You see, and then you have to consider why they are that way. 525 years of colonization can keep people backward. Lebanon, for example, had its independence in 1944. If you want to say that Israel is more progressive than Lebanon, you are quite mistaken. That's what I think.
Well, I think you're
Other than this.
prejudiced because you
Other
haven't
than
seen
this.
Israel. I
No,
haven't
have you seen Lebanon?
Exactly.
Anyway, now, what I can say that, for example, plans like Johnson plan of using the Jordan, if you are pointing at such a thing, well, this concerns both parties, and they were studying the technical things in it. They disagreed on certain things. I think they can use, for example, these waters for their progress, but they have to reach the agreement on how to take the water, what proportion, etc.
I'm sorry.
No,
Well, I keep thinking back to Turkey, this country that is not an Arab country but has accepted the Muslim religion. I keep wondering if there isn't a role for Turkey in the troubled area of the
I
Middle
think
East.
that Turkey is lucky than the Arab nations and the Israeli because we haven't no problem for solution.
lucky.
And we are being a member of UN, NATO. We are just trying to have peace in Middle East. If there is one solution, this is a proposition. I think that will be good, and Turkey will feel better if they.
Of course, you have a little
agree with
problem
it.
over Cyprus, don't you?
Yes, we have problem of Cyprus, but it began to be good position, and I think that we are going to deal with the English and the Greece government. It is going to be a good position. Not it is going to be a big problem between England, Turkey, and Greece.
It's only fair now, Katrine, to give you a chance to project into the future your view, perhaps, of relations between France and the Arab world when the current unpleasantness is over.
Well, I think that instead of fighting on little points, as we are still doing, and being as selfishly nationalistic as we both are of each side, we better take care of of the European cooperation before all. And instead of commenting the events, the past events, we better face the future and taking care of European and world peace later on.
Well, I would say that facing the future, like you said, is only if we'll try and forget the prejudices which were 500 years ago. If Lebanon and Turkey will have prejudices for the next 1,000 years, I don't think I will reach anything. Of course, I can understand one thing. I would say that the Jews had prejudice against Germany because what the Nazis did to the just one second, what the Nazis did to the Jews. But I can only understand this prejudice from those people, from those families who suffered personally from the losses. I think that if we go on we'll never reach anywhere. Every time will be prejudice, and you'll remember what happened 1,000 years ago. There'll be no procedure in the world.
I mean, now
Katrine, wait a minute. Katrine has the word next.
Daphne, are you trying to get rid of your prejudices yourself?
Well, what I say is that my greatest prejudice is that the Arab people don't hate us, and I'm trying to stick to that. But unfortunately, as Ziad said, I don't think I can do it very well.
Well, what I think is this, that as for prejudices against the Turks, there is no hatred against them now. But when we still remember what they have done, there is this, what shall I say?
Feeling.
Confused emotions. And so with the French, now it has passed already and we have progressed. And I hope that we can get rid of our prejudices throughout the world. As for the attitude of the French and the Arabs, France, for example, and the other parts of Western Europe need our petroleum. And in that area, we need the technical help of the West. And we are ready to cooperate, and we want to be friendly with them, as long as they do not misunderstand the word friendship. They think that friendship is that when they do whatever they like in our land.
Look,
now, if we come on equal basis and cooperate,
yes,
we can reach the understanding.
Is it fair to ask you this?
Yes.
Unexpectedly? Which one of the four of you, would the rest of you say, has done most to lose their prejudices since you've known them in these 2 months?
Well, I have talked to Catherine and cleared many points. And I don't think there is anything more.
Well,
Catherine.
I don't say that I am the one that most tried to get rid of my prejudice, but I say I tried much about the German boy, and after all, we have just had 2 terrible wars with them, and I tried and understand Norbert, and I could very easily understand him and find him a very nice boy. And I was very prejudiced about meeting the girl from Egypt, and she very gently came to me, and we started talking, and really I get along very well with her.
I think this is the aim of our forum.
Is it then possible for you to very briefly, each one of you, summarize for me what each of you thinks you have learned most so far out of this 6 weeks of association with people, many of whom come from countries that are hostile to yours? Think a minute. You don't need to hurry, but can each of you summarize for me
You
what
mean
you think
what you have learned against prejudice? Or
No, what you have learned, period, in the way of new ideas.
I think that I observed the misunderstanding of foreign policy between other countries in my country, which I observed, because we are not studying foreign policy in our schools, and our school books are just telling about the chronological facts in our history. And when I came here, I observed and I read all of the newspapers, and something was happened with me. I found that there is nothing wrong with our foreign policy, but there is something wrong in my mind with other countries, about other countries. And I had to change something about other countries by observing real positions among them. Then it must be very wonderful, most wonderful for a foreign delegate.
Somebody want the last word, Katrina?
Well,
Sure,
Be the gentleman one, Ziad.
Well, I have learned to consider another country than my own country. I have learned to think of other problems, of other people, and I think that's a wonderful thing that the forum brought to me. That's one of the most wonderful things.
I wasn't asking for testimonials here. Wait, let Zayed have a turn. There's only
well,
about 30
something
seconds.
I recognized in the last 2 weeks, it is how difficult it is for the government of the United States to shape its foreign policy, especially in the Middle East.
Yes.
I would not accept to be the president of this country, not in my life, not at all.
I agree with you,
It's
Ziad.
awful.
Eisenhower.
Well, if we've done that, if you'd gotten some sense of the complication of the formation of foreign policy in this country, the numbers of different things that have to be compromised, then I think that's done a very good thing. Thank you, all of you. Our next discussion will continue the subject of roots of prejudice.